Solomon finished praying, fire descended from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord filled the temple. The priests were not able to enter the Lord's temple because the glory of the Lord filled the temple of the Lord. All the Israelites were watching when the fire descended and the glory of the Lord came on the temple. They bowed down on the pavement with their faces to the ground. They worshipped and praised the Lord, for he is good, for his faithful love endures forever. The king and all the people were offering sacrifices in the Lord's presence. King Solomon offered a sacrifice of 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep and goats. In this manner, the king and all the people dedicated God's temple. The priests and the Levites were standing at their stations. The Levites had musical instruments of the Lord, which King David had made to give thanks to the Lord. For his faithful love endures forever. When he offered praise with them across the Levites, the priests were blowing trumpets, and all over the people were standing. Since the bronze altar that Solomon had made could not accommodate the burnt offering, the grain offering, and the fat of the fellowship offering, Solomon first consecrated the middle of the courtyard that was in front of the Lord's temple, and then offered the burnt offerings and the fat of the fellowship offering there. So Solomon and all Israel with him, a very great assembly, from the entrance of Hamath to the brook of Egypt, observed the festivals at the time for 7 days. On the 8th day they held a sacred assembly, for the dedication of the altar lasted 7 days, and the festival for 7 days. On the 23rd day of the 7th month he sent the people home rejoicing with happy hearts, for the goodness of the Lord had done for David, for Solomon, and for his people Israel. So Solomon finished the Lord's temple and the royal palace, everything that had entered Solomon's heart to do for the Lord's temple and for his own palace succeeded. Then the Lord appeared to Solomon at night and said to him, I have heard your prayer and have chosen this place for myself as a temple of sacrifice. If I shut the sky so there is no rain, if I command the grasshopper to consume the land, or if I send pestilence on my people, and my people who bear my name humble themselves, pray and seek my face, and turn from their evil ways, then I will hear from heaven, forgive their sin, and heal their land. My eyes will now be open and my ears attentive to prayer from this place. And I have now chosen and consecrated this temple so that my name may be there forever. My eyes and my heart will be there at all times. As for you, if you walk before me as your father David walked, doing everything I have commanded you, I will establish your royal throne as I promised your father David. You will never fail to have a man ruling in Israel. However, if you turn away and abandon my statutes and my commands that I have set before you, and if you go and serve the gods and bow and worship to them, then I will uproot Israel from the soil that I gave them. And this temple I have sacrificed for my name I will banish from my presence. I will make it an object of scorn and ridicule among the peoples. As for this temple, which was exalted, everyone who passes by will be appalled and will say, why did the Lord do this to this land and this temple? Then they will say, because they abandoned the Lord God of their ancestors, who brought them out of the land of Egypt. They clung to other gods and bowed in worship to them and served them. Because of this, he brought all this ruin on them. At the end of 20 years, during which Solomon had built the Lord's temple in his own palace, Solomon had rebuilt the cities Hiram gave him and settled Israelites there. Solomon went to Hamath Zobah and seized it. He built Tadmor in the wilderness, along with all the storage cities that he built in Hamath. He built Upper Beth Horon, Lower Beth Horon, fortified cities with walls, gates, and bars, Baalath, and all the storage cities that belonged to Solomon, all the chariot cities, the cavalry cities, everything Solomon desired to build in Jerusalem, Lebanon, or anywhere else in the land of his dominion. As for the people who remained of the Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, Jebusites, who were not from Israel, their descendants who remained in the land after them, those the Israelites had not completely destroyed, Solomon imposed forced labor on them. It is this way today. Excuse me. But Solomon did not consign the Israelites to be slaves for his work. They were soldiers, commanders of his captains, and commanders of his chariots and his cavalry. These were King Solomon's deputies, 250 who supervised the people. Solomon brought the daughter of Pharaoh from the city of David to the house he had built for her, for he had said, "My wife must not live in the house of King David of Israel, because the places the ark of the Lord has come into are holy." At the time, Solomon offered burnt offerings to the Lord on the Lord's altar he had made in front of the portico. He followed the daily requirements for offerings according to the commandments of Moses for Sabbaths, new moons, and the 3 annual appointed festivals: the festival of unleavened bread, the festival of weeks, and the festival of shelters. According to the ordinances of his father David, he appointed the division of the priests over the service, of the Levites over their responsibilities to offer praise and to minister before the priests, following the daily requirement, and of the gatekeepers by their divisions with respect to the temple gate. For this had been the command of David, the man of God. They did not turn aside from the king's commands regarding the priests and the Levites, concerning the matter or concerning the treasuries. All of Solomon's work was carried out from the day of foundation was laid to the Lord's temple until it was finished. So the Lord's temple was complete. At the time, Solomon went to Ezion-Geber and to Eloth on the seashore in the land of Edom. So Hiram sent ships to him by his servants along the cruise of experience. They went with Solomon's servant to Ophir and took from there 17 tons of gold and delivered it to the king Solomon. The queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's fame, so she came to test Solomon with difficult questions at Jerusalem with a very large entourage, with camels bearing spices, gold in abundance, and precious stones. She came to Solomon and spoke with him about everything that was on her mind. So Solomon answered all her questions